I think when we think about sustainability in general, we think about recycling, we think about how do we minimize our impact. But there's definitely, veterinary burnout, compassion fatigue, things like that, we understand that our veterinary health technicians and veterinarians really deal with day in and day out.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. This episode was sponsored by Zoetis and was recorded live on the VMX soundstage. So first of all, I want to thank everyone who was there who joined us live. For this episode, I'm joined by Sherry Westerfeld to talk about sustainability. Now, as you can imagine, when I first heard this topic, my mind immediately went to environmental sustainability. But Sherry quickly reframed the conversation and illustrated that while reducing our environmental impact is a key component of sustainability, the conversation also includes ensuring long-term health and well-being of veterinary professionals and practicing smarter medicine in order to develop more targeted treatment plans for our patients. And while I absolutely want to emphasize that of course we're focused on minimizing our ecological impact, we also need to make sure we're supporting the people in our field through initiatives centered around words and phrases we hear so often but really can't be overemphasized, such as stress management, promoting well-being, ensuring that veterinarians and veterinary staff can continue to care for patients without burning out. And we also touch on how using resources like targeted diagnostics can help play a big role in sustainability efforts like antimicrobial stewardship, potentially allowing us to use fewer resources and still provide top-notch care. The conversation was a well-rounded look about how sustainability is vital not just for our environment, but really for the future of veterinary practice. Let me tell you a little bit more about Sherry and we'll get into our episode. In her current role, Sherry is responsible for building the sustainability strategy across livestock and pet care to support farmers, ranchers, and veterinarians in achieving their sustainability commitments. She's also responsible for collaborating with broader stakeholder groups to deliver strategic partnerships that accelerate sustainability impact and progress across the value chain. In her 28-year career in animal health, Sherry's held a variety of roles with increasing responsibility, including sales management, business integration, commercial operations, U.S. and global marketing, and business leadership. She holds a bachelor's degree in animal science from The Ohio State University. Sherry, thank you so much for joining me. It was great to see you in Orlando. Let's go ahead and get into our episode.
Pet parents are looking for a veterinary practitioner who can prove they understand and support the relationship they have with their pet, show you value your client's trust, and earn an official Human-Animal Bond certification from NAVC and HABRI, the Human-Animal Bond Research Institute. This certification, appropriate for all members of the healthcare team, explores the scientific benefits for veterinary staff, owners, and animals, and discusses how to establish and promote a strong human-animal bond. Enroll today at vetfolio.com.
Sherry, thank you so much for joining me. It's so great to have you here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I am so excited, Dr. Fleming, about this topic. I'm going to call you Cassie.
I was going to say, call me Cassie.
I feel like I know you already. This is actually my first VMX, surprisingly. 28 years in the animal health industry and my first VMX, and I am incredibly impressed. The amount of veterinarians and vet technicians and health professionals that are stopping by our booth, they're engaging around some of these topics to learn more about sustainability has been amazing to me.
Absolutely. And I just learned that this is your first VMX, and that makes me so happy. We're so glad you're here and that you're enjoying your experience because it's such a fun conference. And yeah, I have to say, I feel like I'm not surprised at all to hear that you're getting a lot of engagement when it comes to efforts on sustainability.
Yeah, we actually have a shared collaboration booth because, again, I think as we think about sustainability, a lot of it is pre-competitive. We need to work together to really think about how do we advance in sustainability efforts. And so if you go to the opposite end of where we are now, we have a collaboration booth with one of our channel partners, MWI, and KVP, and the Veterinary Sustainability Alliance. And we're talking about the different initiatives that we have in sustainability, which is really exciting because we're all focused on different elements of sustainability. So it's exciting.
It is exciting. It is exciting. And so I'm going to start off with this question, which, it seems almost like I could list a whole bunch of answers right off the top of my head. So I'm really interested to hear, just your take in general. But what are some of the challenges that our industry is facing when it comes to sustainability?
Great question. And I think in the veterinary profession, there's a lot of opportunities when it comes to sustainability. It's probably a better question to say, what aren't we facing from the challenges? Because there's so many. But we're really focused on things around people and sustainment of the veterinary profession as one of the core things that we really are proud of. I think when we think about sustainability in general, we think about recycling. We think about how do we minimize our impact on the environment in terms of our carbon footprint and some things like that. But there's definitely, veterinary burnout, people that, compassion fatigue, things like that, we understand that our veterinary health technicians and veterinarians, really deal with day in and day out. So we're looking at, some of those areas to be able to help with that.
And I think that was something that really struck me the first time we spoke was absolutely, he said, here's our topic, we're talking about sustainability, and 100%, like that was, my mind went to recycling and, and reducing waste, these kinds of things. But it was really when you put it to me that way about sustainability, not just in terms of, physical waste, but yeah, sustainability in terms of being able to continue to come to work every day and how important that is.
Yeah, and we understand the demands of a clinic. I mean, we have several of our technical professionals here who have spent time, in the industry as well, and we know that mental health and physical well-being are incredibly important. The demands of being on call, things like that our team faces. Team member retention, team member recruitment. So we'll talk a little bit more about some of the things we're doing in those areas to help. But quality of care. I mentioned earlier, we have Belgian draft horses, we have dogs ourselves, and it's very important to us to be able to have a good relationship with our veterinary professionals. And we know access to care. I mean, anyone that lived through the pandemic, we know that that's really important, and we're continuing to try to help support those areas where veterinarians need that support.
Absolutely. One thing you said that just stuck with me there was when you said quality of care, because I think that is a big component of sustainability.
Yeah, totally. I mean, one of the things we talk about a lot is access to care. We live in a more rural area from a personal perspective, and sometimes, we can't find veterinarians who want to move into rural communities. So again, we want to make sure we're supporting the profession and we're enabling that access to care for anyone who chooses to have, pets as family. You want to have the best care for your pets. And, a part of that is having people who are also happy and providing a great client experience, as they go into those practices. So yeah, we're happy to support and be a part of that going forward. I'll talk a little bit, I mentioned the, kind of recycling, and that's what a lot of people think about when, they think about sustainability. So I don't want to kind of gate over that, but, there's a lot that we can be doing. Waste management obviously is a big challenge. So when at the booth we're at, they're talking about biodegradable products. And so as we think about all the utilization of those types of things in clinics, how can everybody can do something, not everybody can do everything. So, as we think about that, those are things that are really kind of important to us as well. So, and I've seen a lot of great sustainability messages here at VMX around the trade show. So I'm excited.
Yes, yeah, and I'm glad that you talked about that, because I think that is a big topic. You're in your Zoetis orange here today, yes. And so I would love to talk about areas that Zoetis is prioritizing in terms of sustainability.
A lot of people, when they stop by or have conversations with us about sustainability, they definitely think about packaging waste, shipping waste, and we do those things, and we have those areas. We're also focused on, again, the veterinary profession, the human element of that, and access to care for animals. So a lot of our innovation and, different products that we bring to market in our planet. So I'll talk a little bit about minimizing the resources and how we minimize our own impact on our planet. we have projects internally where we look at our own manufacturing and are there ways we can be more efficient. So the products that you buy from Zoetis, they have been produced in the most efficient way possible to be able to minimize our own, carbon footprint of our manufacturing site. We also have looked at our packaging. We know there's several aspirations and targets out there to reduce plastic and things like that in the environment. So we have transitioned some of our packaging from like the plastic clamshells to paper recyclables. We've also taken cotton out of some of our products where we don't feel like it's needed. So we're doing our part as well, even in some of our own what I call primary packaging, to try to help minimize the environmental footprint of our own portfolio.
I have definitely noticed that, in ordering, especially temperature controlled products, that there's been a difference in the packaging, and it does feel much better, like receiving those products going, okay, and there's not a lot of waste associated.
Yeah, and we talk about that as shipping waste. So we're trying to also look at that recycled packaging, the boxes and the coolers they come in, trying to transition some of that from our, traditional styrofoam that you sometimes see. The other thing we're doing, and I mentioned a little bit, I want to talk about the human element. So we really have a lot of initiatives around this. We have a Zoetis Foundation where we look at veterinary scholarships. So as you think about access to care, we want to make sure that it is accessible to students who want to go into the veterinary professional. Whether they want to be a veterinarian or whether they want to go into vet tech, there are scholarships available for those people that choose that profession. In 2023, we actually donated $3 million through our Zoetis Foundation, which provided over 500 scholarships to veterinarians and vet techs, which was awesome. I mean, I'm excited to see, how people are utilizing some of that philanthropy.
Absolutely. And I think at that point we're talking about sustainability and accessibility, and it makes just a huge difference.
Yeah, a couple other things, Cassie, that we had talked about, is our, when we think about mental well-being, we think it's incredibly important. Obviously, we talked about compassion fatigue and some of the challenges that our veterinarians face. And so we also do a lot of work with Not One More Vet. We have a grant through our Zoetis Foundation, again, where we fund some of those projects to help support Not One More Vet so they can provide those resources to veterinarians, who would like to access those.
Very cool. Very cool. I love that, just the broad focus on sustainability and so many aspects of the profession. What can we be thinking about in practice as veterinarians, as veterinary professionals, when we're thinking about sustainability?
I think there's a lot of things. And it's interesting because as we talk about sustainability, we do start the conversation with shipping waste, packaging, and it's really so much broader than that. Judicious use of antibiotics has come up as some conversations recently too. And I think there's a lot of ways that we can think about prevention. We have some genetic testing. So, as you do genetic testing, are there disease predictions or things that you can be thinking about for the long term? There's also, treating atopic dermatitis, things like that before skin infection. So how do you prevent some of that with a great relationship with your veterinarian, thinking about that? There's also some things around, when we're thinking about continuing education. So we have over 1,500 courses that are on demand and free for people to continue to learn more around sustainability and some of the efforts that we're doing. Also from our technical affairs. I think in clinic, there's lots of things that people can be doing. And again, I had mentioned, some of the things around looking at order inventory. So as you're thinking about ordering, do you order every day? I think about this when I do my own Amazon ordering. Can I consolidate my orders when I'm thinking about inventory management so that I'm not ordering every day and having a truck show up? Can I have it once a week? That will really help reduce the carbon footprint of a clinic. It'll also help with things like expired products, looking at inventory more often, maybe reducing some waste, that way as well.
Sure. I know I've certainly been guilty on those orders of oh, and I'm in the middle of it, and I don't know if I need that, and let me go ahead and add it, and then it shows up, and then you have two, and that's not sustainable. That's not helpful. Could you expand a little bit? You mentioned genetic testing.
Yeah.
When it came to, I think we were talking about judicious use of antibiotics in terms of sustainability. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so we actually have a genetic testing where you can better understand the risk factors and health implications to really improve the long-term care of animals. And so you can order those. And part of what that is you can analyze the DNA to really look at those risk factors long-term. So when we think about, access to care for animals, it's definitely around prevention, prediction, treatment. And, we also have diagnostics. So again, there are opportunities to be able to do things in clinic, point of care, where you can use AI for helping, predict some of those things that as a veterinarian, you have more insights to be able to more accurately potentially treat those animals if they need it to provide the best care versus sending them maybe to a specialist or somewhere else. Not that we wouldn't want to do that, but it gives you more options to be able to do some things in clinic.
Yeah, empower general practitioners and technicians and team members within a general practice to be able to handle a lot as well.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know, you mentioned that you talked biodegradable products and things while you've been here. What are some of the cool things that you've seen?
Well, there's some cool stuff at the shared sustainability booth, and I will not speak on those because they are not our products, but we would definitely encourage you to walk around to all the exhibitors that are here at VMX because honestly, there's some really cool innovation that's happening across the veterinary space. So I'm excited to learn more. Hopefully you guys are as well. We've had just some wonderful interactions with people that have stopped by our shared sustainability booth. The comments have really been, I had no idea, that these types of activities and initiatives were happening, whether it's some of our collaborations that we have with Habri, we do work with Adopt-A-Pet on some things. So there's just really a plethora of information that there is to learn by visiting the different booths. We also had the QR code up here earlier. So the QR code will also give you access to a lot of our materials. And then we have links in that material to where if you have a vet that's coming through or a student that is interested in veterinary school or vet technician, they actually can go to that link and apply for a scholarship, through that information. So it's great information to download and kind of send it to yourself so you have access to it later on.
Very cool, very cool. I'm curious, when it comes to sustainability, you mentioned that you have people coming by saying, I had no idea that these initiatives were taking place. That's how I feel right now. I'm like, what it would tell me about Habri and Adopt-A-Pet and sustainability.
So our entire Zoetis team, we have someone who sits on the board for Habri, so Dr. Oliver, he does a great job, really talking about what do we need to continue to think about to help provide the research around the human-animal bond. Adopt-A-Pet, obviously, we want to continue to support programs where, shelter programs and things like that. So we're really looking at the main concerns that are happening, in this space, and where does Zoetis really play a role with being able to help support that, whether it's with our teammates, our colleagues at Zoetis, and really just understanding what those unmet needs are and how do we ensure that we're living every day to help provide the best access to care for animals. I was actually had the privilege of having some conversations with Habri, and it's really interesting in terms of how they're bringing across all of the different, I would call them cross value chain, different organizations, and they're really, their main concern is how do we enhance the health of humans through pets. And, for those of us that have pets, I honestly get happier when I get home and see my two corgis. So, we know they can really, truly enhance our lives. And I think from a Zoetis perspective, we're innovating in a lot of our products because we want to make sure that we're providing, that access to care through the best experience through the veterinarians, and also that, they have the products they need to be able to stay healthy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Sherry, this has been great. I so appreciate you taking the time to come here and to talk to me about all of this. Are there additional thoughts, final thoughts you want to share when it comes to talking about, Zoetis and sustainability and VMX?
Yeah. I think the big thing is, again, thinking about sustainability in a more holistic way. It's really around communities. How do we get engaged in our own communities, and how do we support each other? Our animals, how do we make sure that we continue to help provide the best access to care for animals? And then also, how do we do it in a responsible way for the planet? So how do we make sure that we're, utilizing those resources in the best way to advance these sustainability initiatives? And I guess the challenge for everyone that's listening really is make sure you're taking care of yourself first. So if you think about, when you get on a plane, and I know everybody's heard this, but you put your own oxygen mask on first before you assist others, it's truly a thing. Like, when I think about, we have to take care of ourselves as veterinarians, as veterinary, health technicians and the veterinary health teams, because you're really trying to provide the best experience for those pet owners who are coming to you in a time maybe of angst for themselves, where, they're really worried about their pet. And if you have taken care of yourself and you have the most up-to-date information to really be able to diagnose and treat those animals, they're going to be really appreciative and be clients for life. So I'm excited about all the work. I would encourage you, again, to check out all of the great work we're doing and others in this space, because there truly is a lot of opportunity in the sustainability space for each of us to find one thing that we're going to commit to doing differently after you hear this podcast. So
wonderful. Well, again, Sherry, thank you so much for joining me. This has been a great talk. It's been a pleasure meeting you. So thank you again.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to talk about sustainability. So anytime.
Sherry, thank you so much for joining me. What a great conversation. I want to say a big thank you to Zoetis for making this episode possible. Thank you to everyone who joined us live, and of course to all of you tuning in to this podcast episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. It'll help other veterinary professionals like you find this and other great content we try to put out there. You can find more episodes by clicking on the Education tab on the Vetfolio website, or find us wherever you get your podcasts. We're always eager to hear your thoughts and ideas for future episodes, so feel free to reach out to me at dvm@vetfolio.com. We can connect on Facebook at Dr. Cassie DVM, or you can follow me on Instagram at dr.cassie.dvm. And remember, if one animal is better off because of you today, it's a great day.